Hello, everyone. I'm Frederica Whitfield. We begin with a developing story. A 12-year-old boy shot and killed after police spotted him with what turned out to be a fake gun, and the police opened fire. Investigators say officers got a call yesterday afternoon for a boy waving a gun in a park. We now know that that gun was not real. Sarah Gannon has more on what happened.
A 12-year-old boy is dead after a police shooting in Cleveland Saturday.
I'm sitting in the park. There's a guy and there was a pistol. You know, it's probably fake, but he's like pointing it at everybody. The guy keeps pulling it in ours. It's probably fake, but you know what? It's scared out. Yep.
The gun was fake, an airsoft replica gun that looks like a semi-automatic pistol, Cleveland police said, adding the orange tab that is supposed to identify it as a BB-type gun had been removed. But police say it's not clear if the responding officers knew if the gun might be fake when they arrived at the playground of the rec center where the 911 call was made. When an officer ordered the boy to put his hands in the air, police say the boy instead reached for his waistband.
There was no verbal or no confrontation. The officers ordered him to stop and to show his hands, and he went into his waistband and pulled out the weapon.
Police say the officer fired 2 shots and the boy was hit in the torso. He died Sunday morning following surgery. The family's attorney told CNN, "It's devastating. A mom lets her son go to the park, then finds out he's been shot. We're starting our investigation. We're gathering our witnesses and they're gathering theirs." The Cleveland Police Use of Force team is also investigating.
Their job is to respond to assignments and to protect the community. And when an officer gives a command, we expect it to be followed. The way it looks right now, it was not followed.
Fred, CNN spoke to the boy's family attorney today, and when the issue of race came up, he said this. He said this is not a race issue, it's a right and wrong issue. We also spoke to the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office today and was told that it's possible that a grand jury could be convened as part of this investigation into what happened. Fred?
That's a terribly sad situation, Sarah. And then there was another situation, very different, this taking place in New York, but it has a lot of people upset there. We're talking about a shooting of a man, again, by a police officer, very different circumstances. What happened?
Right, Fred. Police are calling this one a very unfortunate tragedy. They said this was all an accident, an accidental discharge, and the victim, 28-year-old Akai Gurley, they say was a total innocent. It happened Friday in what police have described as a pitch black stairway in the housing projects in Brooklyn. Gurley was entering on the 7th floor, the officer was entering on the 8th floor, and the officer's gun went off, shooting Gurley once in the chest. He died at the hospital. Now, as you mentioned, there were protests this morning, but these people aren't the only ones who have questions about how this could have happened. The Brooklyn District Attorney, Ken Thompson, he said in a statement that the shooting was, quote, deeply troubling and warrants an immediate, fair, and thorough investigation. The officer, I should note, Fred, was a rookie. He was still on probationary status, less than 18 months on the job, and he's been stripped of his badge and his gun for now.
All right, Sarah Gannon, thank you so much for that report. So, 2 tragic situations, very different shootings and circumstances, but could these incidents, both of them, been prevented? For more on that, I'm joined now by retired Detective Steve Rogers, and here with me in Atlanta, defense attorney Tanya Miller. So let's start with you, with the Cleveland shooting, and let's begin with you, Steve. Do you think this is just a tragic case where the officer thought the gun was fake or was real? Could he have reacted differently?
This is every police officer's nightmare, to get involved in a shooting involving a young person. I don't believe, based on the reports that I've read, that the police officer could have acted differently. Look, he didn't know if that gun was real, if it was fake. Remember, that 911 call came in that there was a gun being pointed at people. So the officer, he gave a lawful order, and very sadly and unfortunately, the 12-year-old did not obey the order, and the officer had to make a quick split-second decision. And it's usually the decision is based on either see someone die or you die, or unfortunately you'll have to take the necessary action to prevent that from happening.
But I guess doesn't it also conjure the idea or thoughts that as soon as you arrive on the scene, you see it's a kid, that perhaps there may have been some dialogue that would take place, or just simply by virtue of you being the adult, you're the bigger person, that's being the kid, that maybe you could have tried to tackle the person? Are any of those scenarios realistic in your view?
Keep in mind, Frederica, that most of the school shootings around this nation that killed many, many dozens of children, those crimes are perpetrated by kids. It's sad, it's unfortunate, but whether you're 20, 80, or 12, you point a gun at somebody, that bullet is going to find a target and kill that person.
So then, Tanya, is that partly to blame here, that we're talking about a climate, you know, of tragedies involving young people in recent years, and so no longer is there that kind of presumed innocence when you talk about kids, and so officers on the scene are going to treat them just like they would an adult who may appear to be a threat?
Maybe. I mean, I think whenever you're looking at an officer's use of excessive force or deadly force, you have to look at the reasonableness of his conduct, right? So, of course, what's going on around him, what he knew, what he understood, the circumstances of the case, those are all going to factor into whether or not the shooting is going to be deemed to be justified or not. I do think in this case there were at least some evidence that the officer had that the gun may have been a toy. We don't know exactly. We've heard that the child was...
We know there's the dispatch, the 911 call, but we don't know whether that was conveyed to the police officer that responded. So that's, you know, a gray area.
See, those are things that are going to have to be investigated, and certainly we'll want to know that before we determine whether or not, you know, a charge is appropriate or whether the use of force was justifiable. But again, I agree with you, Fred. I mean, we have a 12-year-old kid at a rec center. Maybe he was, at the time, I think, at least he was seated. If he was reaching for his waistband, were there things the officer could have done short of shooting him to try to gain control of that situation? Those are questions that we'll have to see what the investigation reveals.
And we know those questions will be asked and perhaps answered during those investigations. Tanya Miller, thanks so much. Steve Rogers, appreciate you as well. Thank you. All right, now to Ferguson.